Coming up on our next installment of America's Hope, the March for Life. We're going to be discussing this with people who are involved on the front lines in the humanity of the unborn and what they're doing to save lives. That's next on America's Hope.
America's Hope is brought to you by Birch Gold Group, the precious metals IRA specialists. Text Kelly to 989898.
Welcome to America's Hope. My first guest tonight is going to talk to us about the March for Life. As you know, it is an annual event, and pro-life education and advocacy is important all year long. And it just happened recently on Friday, and as we look back on that march, there's also the focus of looking on. As I mentioned, it's an important matter all year long. Abby Johnson joins us now. The interesting thing about Abby is that she is a former Planned Parenthood director who now heads up the only ministry in the country that helps abortion workers leave their jobs and find new, life-affirming ones. And Abby's also the founder of ProLove Ministries, a network of ministries to help fill gaps in the pro-life movement. Abby, thank you for joining us this hour. And I've got to ask you, you once worked as a Planned Parenthood member. What was that experience like, and what caused you to have the transition over to helping people keep their babies?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. You know, I got to work for Planned Parenthood. I started working for them as a college student, not really knowing much about abortion either way, but got involved believing that I was really helping women and kind of believing that Planned Parenthood lie, that Planned Parenthood is here to help women, particularly low income women. And so got involved as a college kid and just started rising up the ranks and had been there for quite some time and was called in to assist with an ultrasound guided abortion procedure. I am not a doctor or medically credentialed actually in any way, but was called in to assist as the director. And that was the first time I'd actually ever seen an abortion in real time in that way. And I watched as a 13-week-old baby fought and struggled for his life. And I knew then that there was life in the womb, there was humanity in the womb, and I knew that if those two things were true, then I knew I was on the wrong side of this abortion debate. So I ended up leaving, and ever since then, I've been really trying to not only expose the horrors of abortion, but also trying to bring healing to those who have been affected by abortion in one way or another.
Wow, Abby, it's actually a remarkable experience that you went through to realize that a child in the womb was actually fighting for life. The American public, as you know, with the Supreme Court decision and the reversal of Roe versus Wade, the American public is at odds about this on the pro-life side and the pro-choice side. But who's on the side of human life? And as you mentioned, the humanity of the unborn. Who's on their side?
Yeah. You know, I believe it is us. I believe it is those of us who line up and say that we are here not believing that the rights of the child in the womb supersede the rights of the mother. We are here in the pro-life movement to say that the woman and her preborn child have equal dignity. They have equal worth. And what you'll find in the abortion movement is that they are out here saying that the rights of the woman supersede the rights of the child. And we're just trying to bring some balance back by saying, look, we want to support women and their children. We are the ones opening maternity homes, pregnancy care centers, support lines, case management hotlines, programs. We're the ones that are providing that support. You'll never walk into an abortion center and see stacks of diapers or referrals for maternity centers. They provide one option for women who are in crisis, and that is to kill their child. And that is not real help, and it is certainly not health care.
You know, the time that you were there and you realized that you were not in the right field with Planned Parenthood, the young lady who had that abortion, when she left, did anyone provide counseling for her? Did anyone provide healing for her?
No. The
So,
only thing that these women receive after they have killed their child, they receive a brown paper bag with a package of birth control. That's it. There's no referrals for healing services, because that would cause the abortion industry then to have to admit that a woman may actually have emotional repercussions after an abortion. So they're not willing to give you any sort of emotional referrals, any sort of counseling referrals. They are they're going to give you a brown paper bag with some information on when you should call the emergency room if you have an infection, and they're going to give you one cycle of birth control pills, and that's all.
that's it. Nothing for someone who might encounter post-traumatic stress syndrome or
Mm.
some sort of, you know, unfortunately, some sort of guilt that they might feel when they leave that place. Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. In fact, one time I remember a woman came back and she was devastated after her abortion. And I remember my supervisor saying, well, something must have been wrong with her when she walked in the first time. And she said, it must just be hormones. And I remember that so distinctly now that I'm away from the abortion industry. There was nothing wrong with her. There was nothing wrong with her. She felt guilt. She felt traumatized because her child had been ripped out of her womb. Of course, there was something wrong. Of course, she felt remorse. Of course, she felt guilt. The problem was that she went back to the place that had taken the life of her child. The problem was that she went back to the place that abused her, that had traumatized her in the first place. She should have gone to a pregnancy resource center. They were the ones that could have helped her. Or maybe her local church, her local pastor, they could have helped her. Planned Parenthood, the abortion industry, they have no concern, they have no care, they have no sympathy. All they did was laugh behind her back and send her out with no resources.
So, Abby, you provide healing through your ministry, ProLove Ministries. Talk to me about that and what you are able to give women who, one, may be considering an abortion, and secondly, those who have already gone through an abortion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we provide comprehensive case management for women who are in a crisis, or maybe they are a single parent. Maybe they've already had their child and now they're struggling, and they just need some extra support. We believe that we need to be pro-life for the whole life. And so even after that woman has had her child, we want to be able to support her and say, hey, look, we're going to walk along this journey with you. And so that's what we're able to do with our ministry. And so a woman can text us, she can call us, she can go through our website, loveline.com, and we want to reach out with her, to her. We want to journey with her. We want to accompany her. We believe in the gospel of accompaniment. And so we want to accompany her on this journey that can be challenging. It can be hard. But we believe that women are up for the challenge, that with God, all things are possible. And then for those women that have chosen abortion, we believe that God's redemption covers all sin, that his grace covers all sin. And so we want to walk with those women too, and we want to help them find healing.
What's the history of Planned Parenthood in terms of its founding member, and what was her intent?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is something that Planned Parenthood really would prefer not to recognize, but they've kind of been forced to over the past few years. Planned Parenthood was founded by a woman named Margaret Sanger in 1916. The first facility she founded was called the American Birth Control League. She later changed the name to Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger was a woman who believed in the practice of eugenics. Um, she believed in the work of Adolf Hitler. She founded Planned Parenthood with the core mission of eradicating the minority population through widespread access to contraception and abortion. Margaret Sanger said things like, quote, "The most merciful thing we can do to a member of a large family is to kill it." She also said that, quote, "Negroes are human weeds in the human garden and need to be exterminated." Margaret Sanger was a woman who would be absolutely joyous over some of the statistics that we see today, particularly in places like New York, where there are more African American babies being killed than by abortion than born alive. And we see that in other places as well. Um, and every year, for many years, for decades, Planned Parenthood celebrated their founder by giving out awards in her name, uh, naming buildings after her. It was only a couple of years ago that Planned Parenthood actually came forward in an article and acknowledged their racist roots by saying, well, we guess our founder was a little bit racist, which I'm not really sure what a little bit racist means. But they said she was a little bit racist because everybody was kind of racist at the time. Um, but we, as the pro life movement, had been shouting that for decades, and they had been calling us liars. But when you look at Planned Parenthood and their business model, 79% of Planned Parenthood abortion facilities are located in what we call super minority neighborhoods. That means that over 85% of the population in those neighborhoods are minority populations. That should tell you all you need to know about Planned Parenthood and their goals for the minority communities.
You know, you make such an incredible statement about something that everyone should know, and yet so few do, particularly those in predominantly minority communities, low income communities, where they see a Planned Parenthood sign and they believe they're going in there to get services that will help them. Now, to be fair, Planned Parenthood does provide some counseling before pregnancy even takes place, like you said, contraception, things of that nature, and some other needs. But the bottom line is how it was founded by Margaret Sanger, and just her diabolical view of African Americans and other minorities throughout this country. It's just stunning to me that Planned Parenthood has continued to actually try to hide that moment and that movement. Your message to America, not only from a pro-life stance, but as a woman who once worked for Planned Parenthood and understands the value of humanity in the womb and outside of the womb, regardless of the color of skin. What's your message to America?
I think we're at a really critical time in America right now where we need to really get back to kind of basic education. And that starts really in the home with our own children. I am a mother of 8 children, 8 really beautiful blessings in my home, in my care. And, in our family, we talk very, very bluntly about human life and the value of human life. But we're also very careful as parents to protect our children. We are the gatekeepers of our children, our children's minds, their hearts, their souls. And so protecting our children from social media, outside influences, That's very important. I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's never had a social media account. She doesn't have a cell phone with internet access. We don't have TVs in their bedrooms. We are those parents, right? But I firmly believe their children will be better off because of it. So I think parents need to wake up. This is a wake up call for parents in regards to our children. Um, and also we as Christians, we need to be boldly proclaiming the truth of Jesus Christ. Not their truth or your truth or her truth, but the truth with a capital T. And that includes the gospel of life, that all life is valuable, not just life in the womb, but life outside the womb as well.
Thank you, Abby Johnson. We're coming back with more, focusing on the March for Life and the March for the Unborn. Welcome back to America's Hope. As you know, we're focusing on the March for Life, which just took place this past Friday. And now we're going to introduce you to Kelly Lester. She is an outreach director for, and then there were none. Now, Kelly came from a wild life of running drugs up and down the East Coast, having her first of 4 abortions at age 15, working at an abortion clinic and then nearly dying from domestic violence. She had a major conversion and left that life behind. She joins us now. Kelly, welcome to America's Hope, and what an incredible experience that you've had in your young life.
Yes, it definitely is. Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Let's talk about your story. Let's
Sure.
go into what happened before the age of 15 that caused you to experience multiple abortions before ever reaching that age of 15.
Yes, through lots of therapy, I've realized that at a very young age, at 3, 4 years old, I was molested by a family member. And then that just caused a lot of insecurity in my life, for obvious reasons. And I was very shy and was picked on and teased. And then in high school, I had some friends invite me to sneak out and go to a party. And when I did, I was raped. And so that just kind of shaped everything for me, as you can imagine. And many people react differently from that. I unfortunately became very promiscuous. And by the time I was 15, I was pregnant.
And so there you are in the horns of a dilemma. You're pregnant and you're not knowing what you're going to do. What did you choose to do at that young age?
Well, I had already had early acceptance to college. I was a nationally ranked tennis player. I was, a straight A student. I was a good girl, regular church attender. And so a trusted mentor, a mother, a friend of mine, came to me and said, you need to go have this abortion. And when she said that, I didn't question it. I thought, this is a woman who I admire. She's a leader in our community. She is a leader in her church, and was like a parent in my sports teams. So when she told me that, I said, that sounds like the best thing to do. I didn't understand the ins and outs of what my decision was, but I very much knew that I was pregnant and that this was going to end that pregnancy. And so at 15, I walked in alone with a wad of cash and I had my first abortion. And the trauma that came from that led me down. I'd already suffered trauma at a young age, multiple traumas, but that day was really the day that marked me and changed my path. And I just went down complete destruction, like you said earlier, drugs and alcohol and homosexuality and pornography and everything you can imagine, eating disorders, to trying to fill that void from that abortion.
Well, one, I'm sorry that you went through that, and but the spiraling downward, as you've talked about, didn't stop you from having, I think it was 3 other abortions after that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I had my first abortion at 15, which was a surgical abortion. When I found myself pregnant again at 19, I didn't want to do that again, so I went and I had the chemical abortion because I figured this, I was told it's going to be easy, it's going to be quick, it's like a period. And so I had the chemical abortion, the abortion by pill, at home. And that was as traumatic as the first one was. The second one was far worse because I wasn't sedated. I remembered the entire experience. I was home alone. And so I actually had to move from my apartment after that experience. And then I was, selling drugs and doing drugs and living chaos, and was looking for a way to get out of that lifestyle. And so I looked in my newspaper for a job and saw that a women's clinic was hiring, and I drove to the address on the listing, and it was where I'd had my abortions. And
Wow.
people are like, after your bad experiences, why would you go to work there? I figured that my experience had to be different from everybody else. Because if my experience was the norm, I would hear about it. I would know how awful abortions were. People would talk about how terrible it was. But I didn't hear that. I heard, that it was good and it was right. And so I assumed that I was the rarity. I was the exception. And I wanted to help women. And it was phrased as, this is how you can help women. This is how you can help women, in bad situations like you were, and so I came on board, and worked there for about a year, and then realized very quickly that we weren't helping women, and saw women perforated uteruses and hemorrhaging in the recovery room, saw the way that we manipulated and that we coerced, quite honestly, coerced women into having abortions. And so I left the abortion industry. And you're right, I did have more abortions after that, even because I was lost. Quite honestly, I was lost and still doing drugs and still doing all those things. And it felt like my only choice in those situations.
Kelly, those are harrowing experiences that you describe, and many women on the outside looking in. Do you think they're aware of those kinds of experiences that one could go through in an abortion and have the type of post-traumatic stress syndrome or mental trauma and even physical trauma to which you describe?
No, I don't think they're aware of it. I think the abortion industry has done a very good job of keeping people like me silent, or trying to anyway. And I think most women that have the experiences like myself don't share their experiences because, again, they feel like I did, like surely they're the rarity, which is why it's so important for women to speak up who did not have a good experience with their abortion. And most women honestly don't. Many women will cover it and say that, they wish they could have made a different decision, or they had, this issue or that issue. They're glad they had the choice, but that they didn't, it wasn't a good experience. And so it's really important that we listen to women's stories. And it doesn't take a lot of searching or a lot of seeking to hear those stories. We are hearing more women speak out. It's also another reason why, and Then There Were None, the organization that I work for, is so important, because we're not just hearing the stories of patients, we're hearing the stories of staff, of people who are working in the abortion industry, telling their stories of what we saw, what we experienced, how we treated patients, how we treated these women, how we lied to them and manipulated them and coerced them. And through that, it's hard to deny the realities of what's going on in the abortion industry. And so it is important that women get the truth, and they are being lied to, and they are not getting the truth.
Kelly, look, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the turnaround that you had in your life to go on and create, and Then There Were None. Take a slight break. When we come back, we'll finish Kelly's story. We're talking to Kelly Lester here on America's Hope. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back and hear how her life turned around. Welcome back to America's Hope. I'm talking to Kelly Lester. She is the director for And Then There Were None. Kelly, in the previous segment, we talked about how you had gone through this wild, crazy kind of life of running drugs up and down the East Coast and having 4 abortions, and your first one at age 15. And then you discussed the mental trauma that you went through and the physical trauma that you went through having undergone those abortions. Did any of those clinical workers give you any advice or counseling pre-abortion and post-abortion?
I shouldn't laugh because it's really not funny. It's actually really tragic. But no, of course not. Absolutely not. It's even as a worker, we were instructed to make it normal, to make women feel like this was an empowering decision that they made. When those women, I told you I left the industry because of the women that I saw hemorrhaging in the recovery room. When those women suffered those hemorrhaging or those perforations, instead of telling them what had happened to them, we would take them back to the procedure room. We would repair whatever was wrong, and we would send them out the door without ever telling them what had happened to them. because we didn't want them to know that we had messed up. We didn't want them to know that something had happened. And so for sure, there was never any, counsel to go get therapy, or that you might experience emotional, effects, or there was nothing said like that, because we didn't want women to think that that was a possibility. And in fact, when they would call us and say they were suffering from those things, we would tell them they're crazy, or that it must be something else. It must be some other thing. Like, we never advised them to get any kind of help outside of us.
But Kelly, we hear over and over again so many women standing up saying, I have a right to my body to decide what's going to be best for my body. And I understand that. I understand a woman saying that they're entitled to their reproductive rights, but it just seems like all of the facts are not being told. Why?
Yeah, well, I do some sidewalk counseling, and I talk to people, and I will say something like a story scenario that I tell people, and this will give you an example. If a woman is going to the Olympics and she's on track to go to the Olympics, and she finds out that she's pregnant, should she be able to go and have an abortion? Yes, she should be able to have an abortion. Okay. It's now 7 years later, and that woman is married, and she's trying to conceive, but her and her husband are unable to conceive because when she had that abortion 7 years ago, her uterus was perforated, and the doctor never told her. And so she didn't get the follow-up care. Should she be able to have that? And that is not a woman's health care. That is not women having rights over their body or rights over their reproductive health, because they are being lied to on the beginning as to the complications and the risks. They are being lied to if a complication happens. They are being lied to about the follow-up. They're being lied to throughout the entire process. I testify for pro-life legislation, and we will do informed consent bills. And the other side, the pro-choice side, will say that women are incapable of understanding the risks that are happening in this abortion. They're not incapable of understanding risks with a hysterectomy or with a mastectomy or with any other kind of procedure. But for some reason, women are incapable of understanding the terminology and the risks of an abortion. Wow. So they should not be given that information. How is that healthcare for women? How is that your body, your choice? You are not being given the information. And so, you said why? Because if women knew the truth about it, they would choose not to do it. And so the abortion industry knows that. And so they manipulate it to bring women to the only option of abortion.
So Kelly, look, you went through some very difficult times in your earlier years. What was the turnaround? What got you to ultimately become the director for And Then There Were None, and being out there to help women understand what they're really up against when they face an abortion, and providing them with an alternative choice, and that is to have the child, and if they don't keep it, to allow the child to be adopted by loving parents?
Yeah, it's quite a story. I don't know that we have time for all of it, but I'll try to give you in a nutshell. I was in a domestic violence relationship. My boyfriend, we were in a fight. He ripped the door off the frame, and there was a beam on the ground, and he picked it up, knocked me on the ground, went to hit me over the head with it, dropped it, punched me in the face several times. My face exploded. The fight stopped. The next morning, I have text messages and phone calls from my father 1,200 miles away in Virginia. And when I come home, 48 hours after that, I've moved back to Virginia. My dad sees me, my face is all busted. And he tells me that 2 nights before, he had been woken by the Lord and had a vision of me laying dead on the floor with my head split wide open. And so he prayed. And I realized that the moment when my boyfriend dropped the board was the moment when my dad prayed. And it was a couple weeks later, and I'm sitting in the front row of my dad's church because my dad was a pastor. And he gives the altar call. And then I hear, as clearly as I've ever heard anything, I heard God. I heard God say, "Have you had enough?" And I knew that God was calling me home. And I gave him a list of reasons why he could never love me and never forgive me. And he said, "Kelly, if you follow me, I will make beauty from ashes." And that is what he's done over the last 15 years, is make beauty from ashes by me sharing my story. Because you can't make beautiful being molested. You can't make beautiful being raped or having abortions. But when I share my story, I bring hope to women who've gone through what I've gone through, or I bring hope to parents whose children have walked away. And so I started sharing my story on a small level, and I started working at a pregnancy resource center. But there was one part of my story that I never shared, and that was working in the abortion industry, because that was kind of the unpardonable thing that nobody wanted to talk about. Nobody knew how to handle when I would say I worked in the abortion industry. And ironically, I came to a March for Life, and Then There Were None was here. The movie Unplanned had recently come out, and I had seen Abby's story and saw myself on the screen in many ways. And I came to a March for Life, and they were here, and I met them, and I came on as a client, and went through some healing with the ministry, and then volunteered for our sister ministry, ProLove, and then came on staff. And so it's just been an evolution of sharing my story and getting healing, and and getting to bring hope to other women and men who have gone through what I've gone through.
Kelly Lester, I want to thank you for sharing your remarkable and courageous story and what you're now doing to help so many people. What's your hope for America?
My hope for America is that they would find the love of Jesus Christ like I did. It's the only hope that we have. It's the only hope for change. It's the only hope for any good to come, is that we would turn our hearts back to Jesus Christ, and be saved.
Kelly, I appreciate you being on the program. Director for And Then There Were None, Kelly Lester. Remarkable story. Keep your hope alive. We're back with more after this.
One way we're living out this year's theme to be with every woman, for every child, is by continuing to boldly march each year in our nation's capital, calling on protections for mom and baby. In a post-Roe America, the role of our federal legislators takes on even new importance. And our next speaker is someone who understands and honors this role. I am thrilled to announce the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Mike Johnson of Louisiana.
Thank you so much. The beauty of this event is that it's a beautiful picture of America. We have people from all walks of life, all ages, all experiences, all backgrounds. And we're all joining to celebrate life and what it means to be an American. Thank you for being a part of that.
Some scenes right there from last Friday's March for Life, which took place in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Now, this is a pro-life movement that conducts this march annually. But let's face it, they have to deal with the abortion factor in America every single day because so many families are torn with their choices. Is it pro-choice? Is it pro-life? Tonight, we want to focus on what people are doing to save the humanity of the unborn. And Cara Gorman joins us now. And Cara, it's good of you to join us. You are a former employee of Planned Parenthood. Ironically, though, you once worked as a doula, which is someone who walks alongside a pregnant mom who's expecting, and you help them prepare for the delivery of their baby. Explain to me the dichotomy. How did you go from being a doula to becoming a member of Planned Parenthood?
That's a great question. Right, I became a doula because I wanted to help women. The focus of being a doula was always the mom and helping the mom. And when I took the job at Planned Parenthood, I had really no preconceived notions about Planned Parenthood. Politically, I really didn't have a stance, and I hadn't come to faith in Christ yet. So it seemed like a very easy way to serve women. Obviously, I was deceived on that, but it was a 9-to-5 job that paid really well, that was in the women's health field. And so it was very convenient to just move right into a position with Planned Parenthood.
Did Planned Parenthood know that you had worked previously as a doula? And if so, how did they address that?
They did, actually. That was the factor, I believe, that got me the job, because I certainly had no other medical training or anything that would qualify me for a position as a medical assistant there. But my time in the birth industry, not industry, but in the birth field, I think that was like a prerequisite. Like, they knew that I was capable of taking care of women. And so that was ultimately what got me the job there.
Talk to me, if you will, Kara, rather, about what it's like to take care of a woman as a doula. What's the rewarding experience like?
It's really an indescribable experience to be able to witness life coming into the world. I really can't think of anything more fulfilling. Um, you take care of this woman and you watch her belly grow and you walk along her in pregnancy, and then she's in labor and you're just loving her and we're both in the zone. And then 1 minute there's a third person in the room where there wasn't before. Um, and it's incredible. I mean, there's nothing more amazing, I'm convinced, on planet Earth than to
Yeah.
see life magically appear.
And so you went from that beautiful experience, that amazing experience, to what with Planned Parenthood?
The opposite. Um, and I hadn't considered that when I had taken the job there, but it's in the beginning you kind of convince yourself that you're still helping because you're still holding their hand and walking them through a painful process, which almost mimics labor, but the outcome is obviously very different. Um, and so in the beginning, you kind of think you're doing the right thing, just being there for them and holding their hand and loving them during that process. Um, but instead of life coming into the world, you're taking it out. And so I think that process in the beginning, I was very disassociated from. I thought I could just help the women. Um, but as God would reveal, that you can't separate you can't separate life uh, from like motherhood. Like you can't have a pregnant woman. I don't even know how to explain this. It's they are just polar opposite, and it's
So, Kara, you go from this amazing experience to what sounds like a very problematic experience where you're not seeing life born, but you're seeing life taken away. Is that the best way to describe your experience with Planned Parenthood?
in a nutshell, yeah. I think it's there's there's like chapters, I would say. For I worked there for about 3 years, and so you don't think of it that way in the beginning, and you don't always see it that way either, because not all abortions are done in a procedure room. A lot of these abortions are done at home. The women are going home alone to ultimately lose their child by themselves, and so we don't always see that happening. And so in the beginning, you really do think you're helping, until you get girls calling on the phone saying that they're hemorrhaging or bleeding out and that they regret their decision. So it's not always as face to face as you would think. You're not always holding the hand of a girl in a procedure room, although sometimes that is the case, and oftentimes that was the case. But it's a lot more nuanced, and it's not always as straightforward as um, the comprehension of what you're doing isn't always there. Oftentimes, we have a client, a patient list of 50 people in a day, and we're just going, 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 and you don't really realize what you've done until even like a year later, and when you start to reflect on what you've actually been doing, or when if the Lord brings it to light for you, which He did ultimately for me.
What's your advice to women today? Because many women, as I've asked this question of Kelly Lester, are concerned about their reproductive rights, about men deciding what to do with their bodies, or the Supreme Court deciding what to do with their bodies. You're right there on the front lines. What are you hearing from women today, and what are you telling women today?
Um, what I've learned um, about having an unplanned pregnancy is that you no matter what, no matter how old you are, no matter your circumstances, whether you're married or single, or you are well off financially or not, the first instinct for a woman with an unplanned pregnancy is going to be fear. Um, and oftentimes a woman doesn't allow herself to fully process that fear and let herself come to the other side of what that is. They will act upon the fear. And I think that Planned Parenthood is very good at taking advantage of that first response. But oftentimes, if you let a woman know that she has support and choices, and people there who are advocating for her, not just her child, although of course we're advocating for her child as well, but we're really there to provide her with the support and resources to help her know and feel like it's going to be okay, and that no matter what, you will come out the other side of this. And if they allow me to, I'll always share with them Romans 8:28, which is that God equips the called. He doesn't call the equipped. And so oftentimes they may not feel equipped in that moment, but he isn't done with her yet. And so I try to remind them of that, of God's truth, and that he doesn't make mistakes.
And talk to me about the pregnancy research centers, what they do. I'm sorry, resource centers, what do they do?
So pregnancy resource centers are a place where women and men and families can come in the unplanned pregnancy, and we do free pregnancy testing, free ultrasounds, free referrals. We'll refer them to Medicaid. We'll refer them to doulas. We'll refer them to mental health, and we also provide something I love very much about it is that we don't just send them on their way afterwards. We're here for them all throughout their pregnancy, after birth, all the way up until their babies or toddlers, and we'll provide them with clothing and toys, resources, anything that they might need, cribs, car seats. And so we really try to be there for them the whole way through.
So you're kind of like an extended family to them.
We try to be, yes.
Yeah.
If they'll let us.
Cara, I got to ask you, you've been through a lot. You've been the whole gamut. What do you love most about what you do now?
That I get to see God working in transforming hearts. And we had an instance not that long ago of a woman who was unexpectedly pregnant and walked in abortion determined and saying, I'm getting an abortion. I'm just here for an ultrasound. And she walked out saying, you guys helped me realize I'm going to be a mom. And so we get to see God. That wasn't, none of us as humans could have possibly changed her heart that way. It was really just God working in her heart. And so there are hard days, but there are also days where we see miracles and we see life, and we get to be a part of that. And that's a huge, huge, tremendous blessing.
Cara, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for what you're doing.
I wanted to abort my child because I didn't want my child to go through the same things I went through. I got into the room at a pregnancy center. I hear the heartbeat of my child, and from that point on, my life changed. I am now the executive director of Branch's Pregnancy Resource Center. Now the ability to help women and work with women who are being in domestic violence or who are dealing with human trafficking.
My sonographer really encouraged me to be able to see how continuing on with the pregnancy would add to my goals and visions. I ended up calling to make an appointment for the Pregnancy Resource Center. They have diapers, wipes, baby food, formula, and free counseling. And she just encouraged me and loved on me and let me know that I could do this.
When I was 18 years old, I found out that I was pregnant. I was terrified. I was scared. The baby's father wanted me to have an abortion. The first thing I did was run to a pregnancy center. I would not be here today if it weren't for them. The pro-life movement wants to be there to help you. Pregnancy centers want to be there to help you.
We here at Heartbeat are an international network of pro-life, life-affirming pregnancy help organizations. Pregnancy centers are all over, opening their doors, answering those calls, and providing that hope. We are alongside our friends at March for Life with every woman, for every child.
A mom or a dad who's into it, you're stronger than you think.
Pregnancy help organizations exist because of good people like you. Together, we can truly create a culture that embraces life.
And And welcome back to America's Hope. I'd like to thank all of our guests who appeared on tonight's program. I certainly want to thank them for their courage to come forward and share why they believe in the humanity of the unborn. And if they're giving life, protect it. And personally, I just want to give full disclosure that I'm the product of that kind of courage. My mother was raped, and she was offered an abortion. Instead, she chose to give birth to me. And for that, I'm truly grateful to June Lorraine Overton Wright. And I sing her praises each and every day. And may you too understand that the life in the womb is precious and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what June would say. I appreciate her. And I appreciate you, America. Keep hope alive. Until next time, good night.
America's Hope is brought to you by Birch Gold Group, the precious metals IRA specialists. Text Kelly to 989898.